Um, Good morning, good afternoon, all. In name of the INSEAD Alumni Association Brazil, it's a great honor to have you all here for discussing, such an interesting topic. I'm Antonio Uras. I am the president of the association, and we have some important guests today that we are going to present very soon. Well, first, let me talk about another event that we're running today. Tonight, we're going to have a happy hour from our Rio de Janeiro chapter. It will be very fun. So in a few hours, we have that at Garden Mandarin at Gávea. And I came to Rio specifically to meet William, that's our chapter leader, and to meet the alumni who live in Rio de Janeiro. Before introducing this event, let me talk very briefly about the last very successful event that we have from the INSEAD Women in Business Club. That was a webinar about diversity in councils, why it matters, barriers, and how to overcome them. We got, Jandaraci Araújo and Leila Loria with us, and also Fernando Carneiro. Was very interesting panel. We're going to talk about diversity today in a different setting, but we talked about how this should be on boards, and that was a joint event between the INSEAD Alumni Association and also the Women Corporate Directors and the Program of Diversity in Boards. So it was a very, very, very nice event. And for today's event, I will pass the word to Luciana, who is the leader of the Women in Business Club, and in partnership with the Endeavor Club, led by Rafael, who will also be the moderator of the panel, are promoting this event. Luciana, can you just introduce our honorable guests?
Sure. Thank you, Uras, and I'm Luciana. So I'm an MBA at 06, so it's been a while, but and I lead our women club here. And actually, the connection of the previous slide and this one is after leaving the event on diversity, we really had a very interesting discussion, probably triggered mostly by Jandaraci also, is how diverse was our own MBA. And we always tend to say that INSEAD is the most diverse MBA in the world, right? When we think about nationalities, different backgrounds, different POVs. But we just felt that indeed, when you think about the Brazilian representation on our MBA, it wasn't a full reflection of what the Brazilian professional community is or should be, all right? And actually, a lot of movements were happening on one hand, boards and companies really looking to have more racial diversity in their companies. Universities in Brazil, mainly public universities, are having more and more, due to the quotas program, more and more Black professionals are actually also ascending into very well, not only talented, but also from the universities that many of these schools tend to bring talent from. And we, in the middle, as an MBA, still had a gap when we looked into our own alumni group of seeing this representation. So this is what triggered us to start thinking of what we can do as alumni in order to mobilize and also promote this broader diversity in the next intake. So let's make this event more of a dialogue and a petit comité that wants to raise ideas and start promoting our own role in this change. And in order to have foster having good ideas, what we really wanted to get this group is listening for people who actually have been there or are actively a part of this process. So this is why We are today have invited here Jem and Carol from Talento Total. So Jem is the founder and CEO of Talento Total. That is an international nonprofit organization that aims to make the global leadership landscape more competitive and inclusive, accelerating the career of high-achieving Afro-descendants and indigenous young professionals from underserved communities. So I'm gonna let Jem talk much more about Talento Total in a while, but it has been a pleasure on my own personal trajectory of trying to understand how I can be an ally to this theme, to learn from Jen and Carol on their own paths through this. So Jem himself is an MBA and actually has served as an Army officer in rotations in other places. So Carol, she's the Chief of Staff and CLO of Talento Total. She is herself an Afro-Brazilian lawyer from São Paulo, specializing in corporate law, serves now as the Chief of Staff and Chief Legal Officer of Talento Total, and seeks to pursue a JD in the United States also to acquire the knowledge and experience required to work with international corporate law and lead initiatives focused on the incubation of small businesses led by Black Brazilian entrepreneurs. So thanks, Carol, and I think you bring double perspectives also to the table, just like Thomaz. Thomaz Galvão Barbosa, he's now the co-founders and data intelligence manager for MegaEdu. He was born in São Paulo as well, so he holds a degree in economics from the University of São Paulo and a master's in business administration from Harvard Business School. He has worked at the state government, at McKinsey, and the NGO INSEAD Brazil. And he is very interested in the theme of diversity and inclusion and in public policies in the areas of education and economic development. And we have here what most of you from INSEAD already know, Virginie, and she's the Global Director, Admissions, Financial Aid and Scholarships at INSEAD. She has been in INSEAD for the last 20 years. That's why many of us know her personally, or at least for answering the asks for interviews. And before that, she had been studying in the US and working in Brazil. That's a curiosity that I did not know from Virginie before it was starting this event. And we could even speak a bit of Portuguese here, that she hides this from us, but she is a great Portuguese speaker. So thank you, everyone. Sorry for the long intro, because the bios are worth it. So, so Rafa is leading us through the chat that we want to conduct.
Thanks a lot, Lu. And thanks everyone for coming. I'm Rafael Breviglieri. I'm a 19D MBA from INSEAD. Currently I work in a nonprofit that works in leadership development for young people from all over Latin America. So I'm following a very unusual path for an MBA. Previous to that, I used to work at Bain, where I crossed paths with Lu a little bit, although in the office, not in projects necessarily. And we're very happy that we get to have this conversation here. Very happy with the opening we had also from the association and from INSEAD to come to this conversation and organize this event. I think, as Lu mentioned, it is something that is coming closer to the center of discussions within our groups in Brazil. And I think it's super important that we have this conversation and get to the same page in terms of where we are and what we can do. And the idea here today is that I'll facilitate a few questions, more to get everyone on the same page and get all the guests' perspectives on some of the basics of this conversation. But we really invite you and encourage you to share your questions on the chat as well. I think once we cover some of the basics, we'll go to the chat and also invite you to ask your questions directly to guests. One of the ideas of this event is also to recruit potential volunteers in case we want to start initiatives to close the gap we're going to talk about today here. So we're very glad that you're here, and if you have any interest in that direction, also let me and Luciana know, and we can start organizing things a little bit better. So I think to get us started, it's important to have a sense of what the gap that we're talking about, and have a diagnosis of the situation. And we're here with Talento Total, and they have a lot of knowledge about the topic. It's the core of their work. So I wanted to start asking Jen and Carol about this lack of representation. So what is the current scenario of racial representation in Brazilian cohorts in MBAs? I know that you work with Latin America at large, so if you have any insights on Latin America at large, this will be important for us too. And I hope in the future we won't have to ask this question, but why does this representation matter?
Great question, Rafa. And first of all, I must say to everyone, I think we have a mostly Brazilian audience. Thank you for conducting this in English. I always feel guilty when I have a majority Brazilian crowd speaking English. And I actually have to do events in Portuguese and Spanish now. And I almost have a heart attack every time I have one of these events. So I really appreciate you all not only providing this opportunity to discuss this very important topic, but being very open and honest about where we're at and where we want to go. And I think, going to your question, Rafa, much of my work with Talento Total is based upon my personal experiences. So I first went to Brazil in 2001. I was 19 years old, and it was a part of a international military academy exchange program with AMAN, Academia Militar das Agulhas Negras. And I was fascinated by the experience. And as an Afro-American, and where we're essentially a minority population at 13%, much of my experience is influenced by that realization and understanding of the challenges that I face as a person of African descent in the United States. And so I brought a lot of that baggage with me when I first went to Brazil. And I was always very cognizant of where Black Brazilians were, how I could engage, how I could interact. So I've always felt this strong connection because I saw very similar experiences. And as I aged and progressed throughout my professional career, whether it be in the United States Army or having gone to business school at the University of Chicago, my memories of Brazil were always with me. And the first question I asked when I got to business school to myself was, I don't see any Afro-Brazilians here at all. And it shocked me because on my first or second trip to Brazil, I went to all 5 regions. So Amazonas, Nordeste, Porto Alegre, Gramado y Canela. And I knew that the country was extremely diverse. And I just didn't see that when I was in business school. And then when I had the opportunity to work for Citibank in Sao Paulo between 2014 and 2016, it was even more shocking because I was finally able to go inside the walls of corporations that you normally don't get to see. And the disparity was very shocking to me as well. And so I think for me, a lot of the work that I do comes from a place of empathy, because I always think back and say, if I was born in Brazil in 1981, I don't know if I would have made it. I don't know if I would have had the opportunities that I have been blessed with, to fly Apache Longbow helicopters, to live and work in Korea, to go to one of the top business schools in the United States, to live and work in Colombia, live and work in Brazil, and travel around the world and learn 2 languages as an adult. Virginie, sorry, I don't think I have French in me. So I think I'll stop at Portuguese and Spanish. But again, I think one of the things that really inspired me to start this work, and Thomaz was kind of like a gift to me and to this entire movement, because I knew that he had the potential to go further than I did. I didn't get I applied to HBS. I didn't even get an interview, but I knew all of the mistakes that I made, I would pass on to Thomaz and say, all right, don't do this, reach out to this person, do this, do that, connect with this person. I'm going to show you how to make this happen. And he went further and farther than I did. And that to me is very inspirational. And I hope that he passes that on to the next generation of Afro-Brazilians and Afro-descendants across Latin America. And I think we're starting at a very small baseline of kind of like 0 in many cases. And that is shocking for a country like Brazil that has a population that is somewhere close to 60%. So I think we're in a situation, and this is not INSEAD, it's not just HBS, it's pretty much across the board for top 20 schools. And we just need to do better. And I think a lot of this will depend on everyone in this virtual room, because you have the skills and you have the know-how to help very high potential, motivated Afro-Brazilian young professionals navigate this very difficult process. It's not easy. This GMAT is not easy. Applying is not easy. Networking is not easy. Going to another country and studying and figuring out how to pay for it is not easy. So Rafa, I'll stop there. Sorry to take so much time, but I think what you all are doing in terms of this initiative is fantastic, and I'm just here to support as much as I can.
Of course, thank you, Jen, for this. This is super helpful. Carol, please.
Yeah, if I may add, one thing that, you know, Talento Total, we always talk about is that even though we always say information is out there, when we talk about MBA outside of Brazil, there's very little information available. So this panel where we are sharing information, it's very important too, because you're bringing the opportunity of, you know, young professionals of ADI pool to learn that INSEAD exists, that they want to have them at their schools, that, you know, Virginie is open to talk to them, to, you know, give them more information about it. So information is the key, and is what we lack the most in Brazil today when we think about an MBA outside of Brazil. And responding your second question, I think, you know, the INSEAD team can even go further in this explanation, but I do believe that a diversity class, not just in gender, but in racial, nationality, enrich the discussion. So you have different perspectives. So thinking about the classes, that is, you know, the most, what you can bring the most to the classes, as you are from, you have different backgrounds, you have, you know, different experiences in life. And we can see that in companies as well. We can apply this in all different sectors. So that is my 2 cents to the conversation. And thank you so much for holding this panel. It's very important to have this discussion and to admit where we are at and set the goal to where we want to go.
Hello. And Thomaz, I think I want to transition to you now. Your name was brought up by Jem, so I feel obliged to call you here. So I wanted to hear more from your perspective. As we were talking before we started the event, you're wearing many different hats here as an MBA who has recently graduated, as someone who went through the program with Talento Total, and someone who went to a different school from INSEAD and has a different perspective also in terms of representation. So I wanted to both ask you to share a little bit about your process and your experience at HBS, how much you feel comfortable sharing. And if you can also talk a little bit about why you see the reasons, why do you see there's such a strong lack of representation? I think we all are aware of many of the reasons, but I would love to hear everyone's perspectives and then get more of the other guests' perspectives as well.
Sure. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Thanks, Rafa, for having me over. Thanks, Jen and Carol, for the kind words. I'm very excited to be here and talking to all of you. I think that this is part of what Jen just said, that like pushing the boundaries even further, right? Helping the others, helping the next ones that will come to an amazing school such as INSEAD. Yeah. So let me. Why this is happening? I think there are several reasons that we all know. It's like there's structural racism. There is all this lack of information, and people are not perceived that as like those diverse cohorts are not perceived as people that can even reach such high standard of schools and methodology. But I think there's a big issue here that we could address, and we are doing this in this session, is information asymmetry, right? On one hand, the major schools, the best schools in the world, MBA schools in the world, they don't know about this perspective of Brazil. They don't know that half of Brazil is from Black and is a Black population. And by not knowing that, or not perceiving that, they don't know that the people that they are bringing to their classes do not represent the current structure of the country or the current structure of Latin America. On the other hand, Black people in Brazil and Latin America also don't know that they can even reach those highs, that they don't know that those schools are for them, and what are the purpose, and what would these schools and that price and even scholarships, what is the gain for them, right? I think that the first time I heard of an MBA school was when I went to McKinsey, and then they told me that if I did well for 2 years, they would pay for my MBA. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, what is that? Let me take a look at that. It's probably something good. So we have to address this on both sides, right? And I remember when I was in the class at Harvard School, and I told them the Brazil, from my perspective, like what was the composition of Brazil, they were shocked, because the class that let me just give a step back. I come from a really privileged background. I went to a private school in Brazil. I am from the Southeast. I studied in a public university, USP, which is one of the best in Latin America. So the first time I had more Black people in my class was when I went to Harvard Business School, and we were like 16. And every time, everyone around me was white people from Sao Paulo, and they don't know that. They don't know that we don't have any Black people when we are in such a privileged position in Brazil. So that's why it's happening. And now let me tell you about my experience a little bit. As Jen told me, I told you guys, Talento Total was an amazing support for me during the process, by connecting me to people, by telling my story. We, as like Black people, I don't want to be generalist on that, but I didn't know how to tell my own story. And it's vital to go into those MBA schools. We have to say what is unique about us and how we can add to the school. And I didn't know that. I was the first essay I wrote myself as someone else from McKinsey that would want to do an MBA program. I didn't know how to differentiate myself from that, right? From my perspective, telling my story, telling where I come from and what I want to do with an MBA program. I am a Black Brazilian student that went from Harvard. That's definitely opening doors for me. And probably there's the same situation if I come to Brazil for having graduated from INSEAD, right? There will be several doors that will be open for me. Even this networking event will be open for me. So we have to understand how this perspective will add value from my perspective, from my original background. Having this different, I think that this challenge is not unique from INSEAD. It's a challenge being addressed by Harvard, it's being addressed by Columbia, by Kellogg, by Wharton, by several schools, right? It's a must. I think that we have to understand the urgency about it. When I was in Harvard, there was this major problem, like not a problem, but the fact about the George Taylor lives, the Black Lives Matters, and the schools saw themselves not representing the cohort that they were trying to say that they represent, right? They would say that they were diverse, but they were not. So everyone is trying to address this at this time, and no good school can be left behind, can have the privilege to say that they're not doing anything. So I'm glad that you guys are doing that, and count on me to help. I think that's it. We can answer more questions more specifically if you want.
Well, thanks a lot, Thomaz. I think this adds a very rich perspective into the conversation. Again, people feel free to send questions on the chat if you have any. I think I really wanted to hear from Virginie. I think we have a very unique opportunity here to have someone from INSEAD and who is in a leadership position at INSEAD should be having this conversation with us. So I thank you again, Virginie, for being so open and for spending this time with us here. So I wanted to hear more from your perspective also, and from the school's perspective in terms of how do you see this lack of representation from Brazilian cohorts, and how you've been identifying causes and potential solutions to close the gap.
It's a pleasure to be on this call today. Thank you for inviting us, because I'm joined by Marina as well, who is responsible for recruiting in LATAM. So just a little bit of me and why this is very important is because I've traveled as well. I've lived abroad. I've been a foreigner in other countries as well. I lived in Brazil, but and my team is very diverse in the same way. And INSEAD has in one cohort 75, 76 different nationalities. And to your point, Thomaz, is all the schools claim they are diverse, but they don't really have it really in terms of passport, in terms of culture, in terms of all this in their DNA. And the reason why it's very important to us, it's part of the mission of the school. So we should all remember that INSEAD was founded just post Second World War, and with this idea of bringing people together and doing business rather than fighting. So that is the origin of the school, that brought people together in Europe after this war. So, and today the mission of that Ilian Mihov gave us is business as a force for good, and I think we are partly doing it because the alumni that are going back to their countries or to other countries elsewhere, they do bring some sort of wealth, be cultural, be financial, be in their values, or so you as alumni bring something to wherever you go, to the company, the community where you're going. But what we are missing is some sort of input of this diversity sometimes, and I feel like it's a very vicious circle to break. And a lot was said by Jem and Thomaz and Carol before, is we do market exactly in the same way in Brazil that we do in other countries. We don't eliminate by the color of the skin. We don't ask for this sort of information. The racial information is not asked in the application form. So we by no means do we have any barrier, but I think it's what was exposed earlier. It's a lot of self discrimination. People discriminate themselves, and they feel that they cannot go to INSEAD or Harvard or to top business schools, and it's a lot linked to the imposter syndrome. That people feel that they don't belong to these places, and that is the starting point for me of this vicious circle, because we would need people to be able to say, look, this is possible. Play the role model, as you said, Thomaz. Be a role model. Be somebody that can represent being Black from Brazil and having studied in the US, and why not at INSEAD? So we need to be proactive and telling people this is possible. That's aside from the conversation about the fact that MBAs are not well known. It's people don't. I was telling Luciana the other day and Rafa, people don't even know what an MBA is. So then once they know the MBA, they will get to know which schools. And then they will get to know INSEAD. So there are 3 layers that we need to kill or to eliminate before we and Marina can go and convince people to come to INSEAD. So I think this is part of my explanation. Because in terms of admissions, we definitely give chances, and we really encourage, and we can talk about it, financial aid, we have different body systems, and I think you alumni play a great role as ambassadors, not just of the school, but also of the possibility that this is possible, or giving hope, giving the telling people this is possible. When we survey, just one last point maybe that could be useful for you alumni, is the fact that we survey incoming students when they start. Maybe you remember this, but we ask what level of impact different things had, and the rankings come first, and then the alumni come second. It's 77% of the class mentioned that alumni are having an impact on their decision to apply, which is huge. That's my final note for now. More food for thoughts.
Thanks a lot, Virginie. I think it's important to add this perspective of just how much we can do as alumni as well. I think very often we feel like, you know, it's not our responsibility or it's not something we can address. It's like, you know, there are a lot of structural problems behind the lack of representation that we get to see, but I think we do get to play a role, and a big part of this event is because of this belief and thinking about what we can do. I wanted to check. I think the natural transition would be to go into potential initiatives to close the gap, but I wanted to check with Jim, Thomaz, Carol, if there are any other very relevant barriers that they see in terms of access of Black Brazilians, Black Latin Americans to MBAs. You've all raised some points, but I just wanted to check if there are any that you really wanted to highlight.
If I may, the GMAT. The GMAT. And thank you, Luciana, for you and the team at Bain supporting us. That is the most, for us, it's the most important or significant barrier. And that's why we invest so much in it. And I actually like it. I like to see our candidates go through that process of doing something very difficult and overcoming a challenge. It builds character if they stick with it and they stay motivated to accomplish it. But for us, because of this dual dynamic, where you have a very limited access to quality education for Afro-descendant and indigenous students and young professionals in Brazil, in Colombia, throughout Latin America, there's so much catching up that they have to do. And they can be super smart, but if they haven't had the foundational support that they need to develop the skills necessary to succeed on the GMAT, they won't get there. And so there needs to be kind of like a huge investment in terms of providing them with elite educational resources to get them to the level that they need to be able or to be at to succeed on the GMAT. Their stories are absolutely fantastic and mind-blowing, but they can't really apply if they don't have a quality GMAT score and be competitive as a candidate. So I think for us, Rafa, and that's what we invest the most in at Talento Total, in doing that very early in the process. It's super important for us and a huge barrier.
I would like to add some points. Thanks for Virginie for explaining to us about INSEAD. I think that some barriers that we could at least try to mitigate. One is the English barrier, right? Like, what is the level of English that you need to really perform at those schools, right? And really think about it, because you're bringing a different person, that it's a whole package. Maybe if you mitigate this part a little bit, you bring someone that will add so much value to the table, and you can this person will add so much value to the entire cohort that it's a game changer. Another thing is resources, right? When I told my parents that it would cost $1 million to attend an MBA school 2 years without working, this is not something minimal, right? We have to consider that. Like I had the privilege of going and McKinsey would pay for me. But if you don't only want consultants that have the sponsorship, you really need to have scholarships and help them. I got a scholarship from Lemon Foundation. That's why I'm not back at McKinsey. But you have to have scholarships and tell these people, these targets, that you have these scholarships. I think that the school should have a clear target of reaching out for diverse and having diverse cohorts. Otherwise, you won't do this micro decisions, these trade-offs, right, about the people that you want in the school. Otherwise, the change won't come in. I understand your point, Virginie, about like the imposter syndrome. I was at the Harvard Business School. Everyone there had imposter syndrome. All the 90 students, even the ones who have their fathers from PE funds and their grandfathers came from Harvard, they had imposter syndrome at that class because the class was really good. But the point is, if you don't see yourself at the advertisements, at people talking to you, you won't think it is for you. The only person that convinced me to go to Harvard was Jam. When I told my parents, they were like, what? Like, wait. And I had all the privileged internet access, everything to look after Harvard, but I didn't until Jam told you your story is unique. You have to present yourself differently, and then you get in. And I was McKinsey. I had a good GMAT. My English, it's okay. I got a good TOEFL score. So if you want more people, you have to be intentional on it. And the last thing is, I understand the power of the alumni, but probably, and I may be aggressive here, probably the alumni from INSEAD, they don't know many Black people. So you need people who knows Black people, and you don't need to go to the base of the pyramid and in terms of economic background. There are a lot of Black people who look just like me, who are trying to apply to an MBA, but we don't know INSEAD alumni, right? So you have to find a way to bridge this gap. People who come from INSEAD and telling, and hearing things that I heard, that INSEAD is really diverse, that you can go to Singapore, that you can go to France, that you can meet several people from everywhere in the world, that you have weddings when you graduate everywhere in the world, that we have the resources. I didn't even know that my salary after the MBA would help me pay for the MBA. Like, it's in terms of perspective. You have to reach out for those people. If you're really intentional on it, you have to do the trade-offs. And being like, next year, we will want, I don't know, 10% of our cohort being really diverse. That will add value to the class. And you will find ways, because we're really smart people, in how to do it without depreciating the quality of the course or anything that we might understand on the trade-off.
Welcome, a super powerful perspective and also very deep. Carla raised her hand. I think. Carla, please go ahead.
I've been waiting for the time for a question. My question is, I was thinking here, how could we really be practical, you know, us alumni, as Thomaz just said, you know, but thinking about it, I was thinking about my classmates in engineering, in Poly, which is a kind of big funnel for MBA. And I was remembering a long time ago how many Black classmates I had at Poly that could be a potential candidate to INSEAD or for an MBA. And I just remembered only one. Actually, he's now a very successful businessman, a CEO of a multinational company for LATAM. But I only remember on him. So I'm thinking about, and then you think about, let's say, the sectors, consulting, Faria Limers, finance. I don't know any Black business person that would consider thinking about an MBA. So my question is, how can we then enlarge the funnel? I mean, I have the same questions when we think about girls on ICT, that I also have the flag, you know. We need to work on the root, you know, being role models as adults for girls to think about applying for engineering. That in the very beginning. And also I think about, because I come from Bahia, so then when we think about race and Black, in Bahia, when I was a student in Bahia, then I had Black classmates, then I had this funnel large. When you then come to São Paulo, it's even worse, but that's the business area and where the candidates for MBAs sitting on. We don't have many people from Bahia considering go for an MBA, but more people from São Paulo. So my question is, we definitely need to work before, and being very practical, thinking about Virginie, and if Virginie could answer, is like, how's her funnel? I mean, I'm sure that you say GMAT, Jen, but I'm sure that there, when they get good candidates and they're not so good on the GMAT, they would be flexible on that, I'm sure. But I would ask, do they really have candidates and a funnel of Black people applying from Brazil? So that's my question then, and then I think it's improving, as Luciana said, that now poly from US, they are really increasing as the quotas. This is something that will improve very soon, but still, what can we do pragmatically? I was thinking here that I should run after one good candidate that I could support. So then it would be a very pragmatic approach that, okay, let me hunt one and help. But help me with this brainstorm, because I still don't know how we can greater support as being alumni. Sorry for being long, but I need my speech.
No, it's a great provocation, and I will have talk about a bit, maybe share with you some of the discussions that we had, so that we foster some framing for exactly the points that you've put. So maybe just sharing one piece of data. Even like you've mentioned, you come from Poly, and the policies actually have been there for roughly 15 to 20 years, pretty much when we were at college, meaning today, and we looked into this very data-driven approach for Bain as well to foster more Black diversity. Actually, the schools where us at Bain hire from are already 20 to 35% Blacks. So, and we just are not being able to reach out to that diversity for INSEAD now. So just for us also to separate we were not going to solve for all the problems of our structural racism for sure, but probably to Thomaz' point, I do believe there is a gap for us to reach out to these talented professionals, young professionals that are already emerging from top universities, that are already entering the workforce through their own talent, and also with a lot of support from many companies who are doing affirmative programs, because they are allowed in Brazil differently from other places in the world. So this is exactly why our first pillar for initiative was increase awareness and interest across the Black community that already exists, and we cannot reach them. So in trying to find where these spots are, one is Talento Total. I got to meet Jem and Carol because of this. So what are the others? And tap into the knowledge of Thomaz, to many other people. Where are them that we have to go there, right? So this can be a pillar that we could address in order to increase the number of applications, because there are still few. Once they start to come, the second pillar should be to support the application process, either through GMAT prep, essay review, etc., right? That we could help as alumni somehow. And the third can be addressing the financial gap. If you get admitted and really understand, but these are the three pillars. So I'm not gonna talk more to also listen from the group, but these were the three pillars that we thought we should ideate on, and happy to listen a bit more from the group.
We have many hands raised, which is great. I think it was the goal of having this conversation. I wanted to check with our guests. I know that Carol has her hand raised, if they have any responses to the issue raised by Carla, which I think was one of the most important questions we had to address here.
Right, thank you, Rafa, and thank you, Carla, for the question, and for picking our brain. And Luciana brought it up, important information and important techniques to try to increase this pool. But thinking about Brazil and the perspective that you brought up, that you were originally from one region in Brazil, you went to school to another region, we got to think about really, as alumni, you can reach out to alumni all over Brazil, right? I believe you have a great pool of alumni all over Brazil who may have gone to different schools. You probably are not all from the same schools from USP, and probably, you're probably from different schools. And today in Brazil, most of the schools now have Black and affinity groups. So if you want to meet with Black people at your school, at your undergrad school, try to reach out to these groups. And you can reach out to them. They probably will be very welcoming to talk to you. And maybe you can, have a Zoom session with them and talk about your experience at INSEAD. So you can bring it up, the information to them. And then really thinking about diverse schools. We have today in Brazil schools that are focused on Black people. We have Fundação Zumbi dos Palmares, right? So there's a lot of ways that we can collaborate. And I invite you, Carla, to we talk later, and Talento Total will be happy to chat with you, and we can brainstorm ways to really effectively and practical actions that you can take if you're really willing to do something and moving forward. So I really think those could be like the first actions that the team could do, thinking moving forward.
Carol, I'll open for more questions. And also just to let you know again, like Lu and I have been working on this, so we're happy to take more volunteers to work with us and help us organize a series of initiatives. We'll be working on this regardless of initiatives of any volunteers, but if we have any more people interested in supporting us, please let us know. I believe Mauro raised his hand first, so Mauro, please.
Thanks, Rafa. First of all, thanks a lot for everyone. It's been a very interesting discussion. And I just wanted to check in terms of the MBA recruiting resources for a country like Brazil. What are the possibilities in terms of how much resource you put in the communication, and usually the granularity of the reach of this type of communication? Because I think it's a similar problem than consulting companies or banks or any other organization will have when trying to increase their diversity when hiring. And the problem is where they are looking for usually. And then if they go to USP or the other top universities, they have already skewed population of students towards the whiter part of the Brazilian population. So one solution for them would be to start doing recruiting process in other universities that are more diverse, which is something that, for instance, here in the United Kingdom, they already do that. They try to avoid only going to Oxford and Cambridge to try to get like the students, and with the premise that, with the assumption that there are also good students in other universities and not in these top two. But then in terms of the MBA and then where to look for people, like, is there a way, or like in terms of resources available, is there a way of communicating that in companies that are not only like the traditional MBA companies, consulting, banking, or the 4-year line companies, but also other organizations that are focused on social entrepreneurs or other types of organizations that might not be aware that MBAs even exist, and of people that don't have the same mindset when it comes to MBA, but would be good candidates and would present a tremendous potential for INSEAD and for the whole community.
And I think this one is for you more than anyone. And Marina.
Yeah, do you want to give an answer, Marina, or do you want me to start? Or...
I can go ahead and then you can compliment me.
Sure.
So we don't currently have any specific strategy to focus on any group. We do participate in several fairs, and we have marketing ads that don't specifically target a specific company, but we are currently working alongside Lu and Rafa to see which are the activities we can further develop in Brazil and other regions, so that we can have more prospects and more applicants that represent the real culture and Brazilian people. Virginie,
Yeah, so just to give a holistic view as well. So the way we work is that we divide the world into people who will be able to travel and know the region. So Marina covers Latam because coming from Brazil, she has this understanding of the subtle aspect of the society. So, and it's the same, we have the same in China, we have the same for Africa. So we want as much as possible people who can relate to prospects in the first place. And then we go to different schools, not just with this idea in different schools or different company or different, not always with this idea of how many applications we can get from one event. So we are very mindful of the fact that sometimes we will go to a place where maybe we won't have any application this year, but maybe in 2 years' time we will. So we have this two approaches that will yield some applications because we obviously need to feed the pipeline for the current classes, but we also have this proactive approach that you seem to highlight, where we go to not just the top well-known school. We are happy to go elsewhere as well, even if that means we won't have any application this year from this specific part or university. I hope that answers your question. We do marketing and business and development if you wish. It's both in parallel.
Okay, thank you.
Mauro. I think we have time for one very quick question. I think Alexandre had his hand raised before. I want to be mindful of time as well. So Alexandre, if you can share, I know that Tura's shared on the chat, and I know that the guests will be happy to take the questions offline as well if they have them. Alexandre, please.
First, thanks for for all the speakers here. Thanks for the contribution. It's very interesting to listen to all different perspectives. The thing is, it's very difficult to get people, people from African background, in the pool of candidates to the MBA program. We know that, but perhaps I think in this case, if we want to be more diverse in terms of race, I think we should, as an institution, INSEAD will have to be proactive, because if we are reactive, we will continue in the same with the same kind of mix, and we want to change that. So what I think, it's now not that many initiatives here in Brazil, but there are quite a few, and probably people like Thomaz and Carol and Jem could help us reach these exceptions, and perhaps we could have we could start some kind of scholarship. I remember when I was at INSEAD in the 90s, there was a scholarship just for Italian background students, and the Italians here are people with Italian background as part of the elite of this country, white and European descendants. And perhaps we could have some kind of, I don't know if that exists within the INSEAD community, but in my promotion, there were over 200 people. There was just one Black student. There were many from Africa, but they were from Black Africa, and just one. And this one got the Henry Ford Prize. He was the very best within the whole promotion. So he was, number one. So it's so good to have this, counter example, and perhaps we can get these exceptions here to start with something different. And I know, because I'm a recruiter myself, I'm a headhunter, and we know how difficult it is to reach out to these people. And there's so, I have a current process today, and I'm so happy to have a Black woman, She didn't get the offer. She was, she was number 2, not because of the color of her skin, but she did very well. But it's so unusual to get a Black woman for a top position as as a candidate. So what I think we have as a school to go and try to see these exceptions and see, like, there is a group of bureaus of how to say that, lawyer firms here in São Paulo, that they have, it's not for Black people, it's for people from the outskirts of São Paulo, but most of the participants are Black. Okay, and these people now, after a few years, and they have a connection with one major private university called Mackenzie University, to contribute with the academic background of these people, and they can graduate in law. Examples like that, we would have to proactively try to understand and perhaps offer some kind of scholarship, so that one scholarship, even if it reaches 1 or 2 or 3 people, but these are showcases that, because we are in such a big country, we will have scale if we have 2 or 3 good examples that we help and we assist to reach out to INSEAD, then other people will come, and perhaps in a decade we will have a pool. So I don't think there is any way to do it in the short term, rather than just having these counter examples or people that you will spot, because that's a problem of the society, and it will take at least one generation to correct what is missing here in Brazil. And it's not just Brazil, because at least what I saw at INSEAD in the 90s, it was a global theme. So that's a suggestion, to have a scholarship.
I think your points about proactivity and the role models, I think, are super relevant to the discussion. I want to be mindful of time. It's 1 p.m. and that was the time to close the event. I know Thomaz has a point, but I wanted to thank you all for being here. And if you have to leave, we totally understand. I also wanted to keep some time for our guests to say their final words. As I mentioned, Lu and I are committed to organizing the discussion and following up in the groups, following up with the alumni community. And if you have any ideas, or if you want to take a leadership role in this effort, do let us know. We'll be happy to take more people in this initiative. So Thomaz, and then we can hear from the other guests as well.
Guys, everyone, thank you very much for this discussion. I think that this is part of what we could do pragmatically, right? Sit down, smart people deciding what we can do together to solve it. Feel free to reach me out, and then I could help. For me, it's an honor. It's passing forward what Jen did it to me. I would like to leave like 3 just thoughts for us to think about. One idea is, we're really smart people. We solve problems every day, like companies, tech companies, consultants, and even in Faria Lima, when we need now developers or engineers, we do everything we can to get them inside, and then they are inside. So we can also do something about it, this issue. The second thing, it's an urgency matter. In 5 years, if INSEAD has not enough diverse cohort in terms of Black Brazilian people, it will be embarrassing, right? Black people are being killed every day. And if they ask about, oh, why is INSEAD doing that? And in 3 years, we're not doing anything, that's a major problem for the school. We're not following what the world is doing, right? And the third thing, and I agree with Antonio, you have to set clear, pragmatic targets. So everyone has the incentives aligned, and they will do what I can to bring really smart, brilliant Black people to the school, like having Jam, I don't know, talking to me. So let's do it. It's just like next time will be in 5 years, we'll be in trouble if we don't. I really have to leave. I'm so sorry. I was honored to have this debate. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Thomaz.
Thanks, Thomaz.
Yeah, great. Yes, great discussion and definitely a lot of points taken, food for thoughts, absolutely. And I like what Thomas had said earlier, we need to be intentional about it, otherwise that will never happen. So yes, that's definitely very, very relevant, very present, and Marina and I will talk more about this in the next few days. So thank you for being, for pushing us to the boundaries like this and helping us move forward. And I'll reach out to some of you indeed, definitely, for more support and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Thanks again for being so open and spending this time with us. I think it's a privilege for us also to be able to have this conversation with someone from INSEAD.
Yeah, the scholarship is and we have more comments on financials. It's an important one, though we've made a lot of progress since then, Alexander. We have more scholarship.
A great point. Jim, Carol.
No, I would just like to echo the comments that we've heard in the past few minutes. I think this is a great step in the right direction, and I'm committed. I don't think Talento Total is going anywhere. And so if you all are committed, we're here to support you as much as we can. And I believe, as Alexandre said, this is not a easy fix. You know, literally it will take a generation, but you have to start with one, right? If that may be it. And for us, Thomaz was the one. Like, we needed one. And if you get that one, you can then use that person as the example to inspire the next generation. The same way it happened for the first woman who ever went to INSEAD. I don't know who she is, but I know she exists. Or the first group, they provide the inspiration for generations beyond. And so I think we need to start, you know, we can start small. The baseline is low, but we have nowhere to go but up. So we're here to support. Carol, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. As Jen mentioned, like Talento Total is here. We are here. We are more than happy to, you know, brainstorm actions, because Talento Total is also about actions. We like discussing, but we like even more putting actions and, you know, moving forward. And as you know, everybody mentioned, we are discussing this, and I will just pick your brain on what we can do. What are the actions that all of us can do, you know, today, starting today. So please feel free to reach out to us. I try to add everybody. I send most of you a LinkedIn request, the ones I was able to find on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to connect and you know, do the actions needed to have more Black and Indigenous people coming to the INSEAD.
Thank you all again. Lou, any words?
No, maybe if I may, I love the provocations on getting to action, and it was great to debate, but we really need to move. And I love the point from Uras on having ourselves goals, and it's honestly, it's not on the hands of each one of us, the goal, but it would be more of an ambition maybe. If I am to think at least about one small goal, ambition, and one small action, I would love to us to already at least reach out to your candidates in Talento Total and offer them a session about what INSEAD is about, and
no, great, let's
why
do it.
We love INSEAD as alumni, and maybe that we can start from this group and expand further. That's at least one action.
Let's do it. Done. Consider it done.
So we put together some of us here, and maybe at least a goal. Let's. It's almost shameful to acknowledge that we invited Thomaz. He's a great talent, because we didn't really think about any Black alumni in our Brazilian community. So we should aim to have our first before end of next year, maybe, and really put our best efforts to make this the first case that we all support, and make it happen. If it doesn't happen next year, it might happen soon enough, but let's try to push for that. Have our own Thomaz. Yes.
Exactly. Well, people, thank you all again. As I mentioned, Luana and I will be organizing the points we've discussed here. Thanks everyone for being so open and for bringing so much into this conversation. I know we're living with many ideas and many action items also that I think will start moving the needle. And as Jen mentioned, it's the work of a generation, but here we are starting it. So so I'm very glad that we're doing this work.
Thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, everybody.
Obrigado.
Ciao, ciao.